And today, we're going to take you on a bit of a journey. So over the past few years at Rockwell, we went through implementing a content management system within our company. So we're going to tell you about our landscape, what we went through, our challenges that we faced, why we did it, what we learned, and what you can take back into your organization.
But first, a few words about Rockwell Automation so you can get a better understanding of who we are. We are a big company, over $6 billion in sales, over 22,000 employees with operations all over the world. We're a very old company, over 100 years old. And what we do, we provide automation solutions, services, and products to manufacturers and process operations, and we are the largest company in the world solely dedicated to automation technology. And when you have as many products and as many services and solutions as we do, you generate a lot of content, and you're generating a lot of content for several personas, several different types of customers at various stages in their customer journey. And this is just a small sample of what we do. I mean, we do the large long-form white papers on various capabilities, but then we also do videos ranging everything from product demonstration videos to documentary-style case studies of our customer success program, along with more legacy types of piece of content, like older pieces of content, like brochures and advertising. And when you have a lot of content and a lot of calendars, it means you have a lot of calendars. And for us, what does that mean? That means that we had our customer magazine's content editorial calendar sitting on a intranet site within our organization. We had our blog calendar sitting on a Windows shared drive in our UK office, of all places. We had our case study program being managed on a SharePoint site run by our agency. And then we had different content calendars being managed by our various business units, industries, and initiatives on various shared drives, desktops of certain stakeholders. What does that mean? It means that everything was being meticulously tracked and it was being updated, but there wasn't full transparency of content development across the organization. And that was a challenge. It also meant that we had a wide-ranging collection of processes for developing our content as well.
All right, so with that said, we needed something to help us out. We wanted a tool that could help us with managing from the idea of content through the creation to the distribution and the overall analytics of what are we making? Is it working? Do we have enough of the right thing? And having a digital way to hold all of that information. So on this slide, these are just some examples of some of the players in this space. The one thing that I did find is there's really no perfect tool, but you find the one that works best for your organization, and that might change over time as as your company changes and evolves. Okay. Next. All right, so the first thing that I would suggest doing is find some friends. It's good to form a steering committee as you're going through the vetting process, evaluating tools. Pick some key folks in your organization that can help you with that process. For us, it was having people from regions, people who own the budget and have content strategy, the folks who are managing the actual content creation, maybe legal, translations. Form this committee of people who can help to poke holes and show what they would need in the tool, what kind of gaps that they have, and that's going to help you know exactly what you need as you start going through those demos. Some of the things that we did look at was just what kind of platform would manage our campaigns, what kind of workflow processes are involved, how will it integrate with our tech stack that we have today, and how easy is it to use? Because we have a lot of tools already, and we need something that people are going to embrace. All right, so from there, go through and I guess same thing, just knowing what you want, knowing what you need, you can begin doing some of those demos. The one thing that I did find is that once you have a good understanding of your requirements, you can be on a demo call for 5 minutes and know right away, nope, not the right one for me, and move on to the next. And that's nice to do because otherwise you can spend a lot of time going through that vetting process and doing different demos. Okay. And so as you're rolling out your platform and you've determined what you want, one thing that is really helpful to do is make sure that you have that support from leadership in the beginning. So this is an example of kind of how we thought about rolling it out. So we kicked it off with just a pilot of where the greatest need was in our organization. So we had folks in Asia Pacific and Latin America who were managing emails in Eloqua, and they needed help with their emails and working with a vendor who was supporting them in just organizing the whole process and dealing with translations and time zones and vendors. So using a tool was really helpful to manage that process. And while they were figuring it out, that gave us time to figure out how do we want to configure it, what are the things that we would need for training, and just work on the whole strategy before we rolled it out to the rest of the organization. And then from there was the overall kickoff, which we had leadership start in the beginning, just explaining why we were investing in this tool, why it's important, the reasons why using it is not optional. We need everyone in. And that's one of, I guess, the greatest takeaways is if everyone's not using the tool, it just won't work. It's hard to have one global hub if you only have half of the people using it.
From a pilot perspective, you really want to try to stress test the system in multiple ways. And for us, in my team, we followed on the heels of our colleagues in Latin America and then our software team, which is always a very innovative group. We started with two different areas that I managed. First was the Rockwell Automation blog, which was relatively a new property for us. So its processes were a bit more flexible, a little bit more loose, and during the pilot phase, we actually found that integrating our processes and content development into that content management platform helped us refine our processes, find ways to save time, increase speed of review of content, and actually find ways to activate that content much more quickly and then much more efficiently. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum was our case study program, which was a very long-running program, very regimented, very strict steps that included internal review, customer review, legal review, all these different steps, and then bringing that into the system broke other things as we're trying to figure out, okay, well, wait a minute, this workflow is too long, this doesn't make any sense, and oh, wait, we need another field over here so we can catalog this stakeholder's feedback, and oh, wait a minute, the sales isn't in the tool yet, so we can't include the sales lead on the review within the system. How do we reconcile that? So for us, our pilots taught us a lot, which then we were able to feed back to Rachel so she could engage the vendor and move us forward in refining the tool.
All right, so as you start setting up your platform, there's 4 main areas that I would think about as you're setting it up. So the overall configuration, thinking about how you're going to have the workflows, what kind of fields would be in there, what are your naming conventions, and then the governance, how are you going to maintain the platform that you create, and then the rollout, what's your plan of attack, how are you going to get it implemented into your company, and then the overall adoption, finding the ways to get people in it, using it, and hopefully loving it. So we'll go through each of those in a little more depth. But moving on to configuration, if you don't have documented personas and buyer's journey stages for your company today, this would be a really good place to start. So getting, maybe working with that committee that you have on vetting out what they should be, getting the overall blessing of it, and then that's a great thing that a lot of these tools let you do, is be able to tag and build a filter and do content audits on the pieces that you have today. So think about that part of it. Also looking at the content types and the taxonomy. So if you're using multiple repositories and you're going to have them integrated, you want to make sure you're speaking the same language. So if you're using PowerPoint in one and presentation in another, it's going to get confusing for your users. So try to keep consistent with the different naming conventions. That also goes along with just like how you name your assets that you're uploading. So making sure that if whatever you're naming your file is consistent across the different repositories. Also think about the workflows. One thing that we struggled with is everyone has an opinion as you start working on this tool. And you'll find that you'll keep adding and wanting to have more steps. And suddenly your workflow process can become really long. And that's hard for anyone who's actually using the tool They're spending a lot of admin time checking boxes and not doing the things that they enjoy doing. So just keeping it down to like when you're just passing of hands. So if I'm creating a brochure, Stan's reviewing it, those would be my 2 steps. You don't need all of the weeds in between, otherwise it becomes too clunky. And then also, again, just thinking about the whole integrations and knowing what you have today and how the platforms that you're looking at will work with the stuff that you have in your technology stack already. All right, so governance. Once you have all of that thought through, you want to start to think about what how you're going to maintain it. So again, thinking about the fields, same with the workflows, it's easy to overdo it and start capturing all kinds of information that you might think you need around a project, but it starts to make all of the entries really long and clunky. So keep it simple. Also, same with just the process around archiving and deleting. So have a strategy around how long something's going to live in the tool. When do you delete it? Because that's the kind of questions that you're going to get right away. So having that figured out in advance is helpful. Also thinking about who gets to have an account in the tool. So knowing the different users and rights that you would have and when you add people and when you delete them, what kind of partnering agencies get to be in the tool. Having a plan for that is going to be really helpful with knowing the amount of users you need when you're working on your contract.
Your processes, when it comes to content development, need to reinforce your governance. So for example, depending on how you set up your blog development process, once you move it into your content management platform, let's say that people have to submit content as an idea, you want to make it painfully clear from your processes who should be submitting ideas for a content type versus who should not. You don't want to create this new environment for collaboration and then invite chaos into it. If people are opening up records and they're updating something, your processes need to reinforce the fact that, okay, if you're opening up a record, you need to make a note within that record of what you changed. Different tools will provide different functionality as far as, okay, a file was updated. It may timestamp it. But having a clear channel of provenance as to what has changed within this contents record is going to reinforce your governance.
The other thing that's really important just to point out, and I don't think that we've perfected it today, is just overall tagging. It's easy to go overboard and tag everything with all the different segments or industries that you may have. And then when it comes down to using those tags to search and find your content, you've diluted your search. So set some sort of rules around how many tags you can have on a piece of content. All right, so now that you've had it set up and you want to train and roll it out, kind of going back to what I mentioned before, I would really start with having some kind of kickoff from leadership. So we had our VP and the rep that was with the vendor that we selected go on the call with all the people who would be using the tool and just explain the importance of why we were doing it, why we were investing in it, and what we were hoping to get out of that platform. It made it clear that it was the tool that everyone was going to be using and made it a lot easier to have support down the road. The other thing that was really helpful too is just to have customized training sessions. So rather than rolling out training to everyone with the same modules, thinking about the ways that they're going to use the tool and give them the training that relates to their role. It made it a lot more sticky and got them in the tool a lot faster.
From an adoption standpoint, one of the things that we found that really helped drive adoption through the organization was showing the value of having implemented the platform. And for me and for many of our stakeholders, first and foremost was the transparency that a centralized system offered. Before, I would get 5 to 7 queries a week regarding the status of certain things. For example, Stan, how many case studies do you have that involve programmable automation controllers and I/O and are in the oil and gas industry? But I don't know. Give me a while and I will look that up for you. I'll go through the system. Those days are over. Now I tell them to go to the content management platform, filter by product specifically, filter by industry specifically, and self-serve that information. It's really empowered the organization to be able to pull what they need when they need it. And then if they have questions, they can come with much more informed questions that helps me support them better. And I can't tell you the glory of centralized calendars where you can bring up your blog calendar for the entire year and overlay it with your magazine's calendar for the entire year and your 6 different e-newsletters that may be going out over the course of the year. And admittedly, right, marketing automation platforms that send out email can protect you against sending out multiple emails to people who may have subscribed to multiple deliverables. But at the end of the day, aren't you really striving to cadence your communications more strategically? That's what centralized calendars give you. From an internal champion standpoint, Rachel has one of her internal champions standing right next to her because I was one of the first people who is obviously going to benefit from this. And there were many others. And we were motivated to help follow up, for example, the training that she gave with very specific training tied to role. So, for example, our case study manager in Australia set up a late-night call with her, with Rachel, to step her through the process, but then what's going to be that extra carrot that we can use to lure her in? Well, and her name's Anne. Anne, we want you to and need you to use this system, and now if you want your content published to the global website, your case studies published to the global website, you need to use this tool. That's what drives adoption.
And the thing that was really helpful, was that me? Oh, that's me. The thing that was really helpful for me is once you find those internal champions, they can start to help you with the overall training. So it can become really overwhelming for one person to answer all the questions that people have in the repository. So for Stan to be able to work with someone on case studies and show them how to use the tool and own some of that is really nice to spread the wealth and have super users scattered throughout the organization.